A line graph is an essential part of any lab or experiment. In order to make a line graph, you need to identify certain components, such as the independent and dependent variables. So step 1, identify the variables. So me and Ron decided to do a small experiment in which we grew plants for over a year. And then our variables were the month. So like we recorded the growth of the plants for every month from January through December. And then the height of the plant in inches. So in our graph we had a range. The range was from 0 inches to 14. So those are the variables. Step 2 in making a line graph to interpret data is to determine the variable range. So as we stated earlier, the variable range was from 0 to 14. Once you have determined your variable range, the next step is to determine the scale of the graph. For example, if you were to draw a line graph on paper, you'd probably space out your variables. Like for example, every 3 lines make a month, or every 3 lines is 2 inches. So that gives you an idea of what you want to show on your graph. Do you want to show a sharp increase? If so, make your scale smaller. If you want to show like a spread out variation of your variables, then you want to make the scale larger, basically. The very next step in making a line graph is to number and label the axes, which of course seems like natural common sense. So for our graph, as you can see, we labeled our x-axis months from January through December, and we abbreviated it. And our y-axis were height of the plant in inches. As you can see here, we decided to label it from 0 to 16 instead of 14, with 2-inch increments in between. After you have labeled and numbered each of the axes, you must plot the data points. So in our case, what we did was we initially created a data table with the months and the inches. So we grew 2 plants, potatoes and cherry plants. And then we had the inches on the right hand side and then the months on the left hand side. We identified the month and the inch as the ordered pairs. So for example, we started out with January and identified the initial height of each plant during that month. And then we did the same for each month until we finally plotted all the points and we had a set arrangement of data. So that was it. After you have plotted the data points, step 6, draw the graph. This will help you determine if there's a sharp variation between the points or if there's no variation at all. For example, in our graph, as you can see here, we had a sharp increase in the cherry plant from October to December. And then from January through October, the growth of the cherry plant was it was constant. There was no sharp increase or decrease. As for the potato plant, however, we didn't notice any sharp fluctuation in data. As you can see here, the plant did steadily continue to increase, but from June to August, its height remained the same. And from August to December, its height increased slowly at a constant rate. So by plotting the points, you get a better idea of the change in data through a certain interval of time. So once you have identified the points and plotted the lines, you must title the graph. Of course, title the graph. Without titling the graph, you will not understand what the main point of the line graph is. So as you can see here, we titled it Annual Plant Growth, which is completely appropriate in our case. And then we also labeled the axes with height in inches, as well as making a key for which plants are which. We also color coded them. For example, as you can see here, the cherry plant is in red and the potato plant is in blue. So this concludes our line graph. It makes it complete. Thank you.